I first of all, I would like to welcome Raymond Bedell, just to give you a bit of a highlight on and an update on what's happening with the Freemasons Without Borders Master Masons Lodge. Ray, are you on?
I am, Amit. Good evening, Amit. Good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you, Amit, for the opportunity to share some information, of course, this evening, but it obviously is an ideal platform to share some information where we are now. The Freemasons Without Borders Lodge of Master Masons in concept has now been agreed by the Grand Secretary and the Grand Lodge of Master Masons. And since last Thursday, I've emailed out to 220 brethren who have expressed an interest in being a founder for that unit. Obviously, in that time, I've tried to acknowledge when they have sent back a petitioner's form, which obviously is what's needed. I've received over 100 to date, but obviously we may have brethren on this evening that weren't aware of the project. The idea is the lodge is going to meet 3 times a year. The installation meeting will be in London, but the other 2 meetings will be held in other districts and provinces around the world. Within that time, of those 100 petitioners so far, I've had replies from America, all over Europe, Greece, Cyprus, Finland, Romania, Spain, Ireland, you name it, as well as stretching out to India. So it's not just a UK-based lodge. That's quite clear. That's going to be very clear from it. I will say that we are looking for petitioners' forms back by mid-February. There was a Google form to express your interest. So if you haven't signed up and interested in doing so, please do so. Equally, I will add that there is now an FWB Master Masons Facebook page. And of course, from there, I'm going to keep everybody up to date on that platform as well. One question that has been expressed is about meetings. And I'd just like to share the idea of meetings is that the meetings will be on a Saturday, so that obviously if we travel, we have the weekend wherever we are, and those meetings possibly could be on the 2nd Saturdays of March, June and October. So it gives some idea of the proposals. As I say to all brethren on this evening, if you're interested, if you've got questions, we're here to answer them, so please let us know. Thanks, Amit, again for the opportunity to share this evening with all the brethren on tonight. So now let's get on with this about the director. So brilliant. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Well, brethren, that gives me the absolute pleasure to welcome you all first and foremost. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, today's session, as you well know, brethren, will be run slightly different in that it's mostly a chance for you to ask the director any questions you have for him. However, may I please stress that you ask questions only that are related to the films and to avoid any statements. To ensure that we run this session smoothly and to give everyone a chance to ask their question, please use the hand up icon, which can be found in the participants tab on Zoom, and wait for your name to be called out. You may then unmute yourself, ask your question, but then please do not forget to put yourself back onto mute. Brethren, if you could do this from now, as I know many of you have questions, so if you could start raising your hands. I've got a few that were sent to me, which I will post to Tristan first and foremost, and then I will invite you all on to ask yours. If you do have more than one question, we will try to, we'll try to fit them all in if we can, but if I can ask you to just ask one question initially, give everybody a chance to ask their questions. And brethren, it is now my pleasure to introduce you to Worshipful Brother Tristan Bourlard. Tristan was initiated into the Lodge de la Parfaite Fraternite, alors number 20 in Mons, under the jurisdiction of the regular Grand Lodge of Belgium, where he was subsequently pastored and raised. Brethren, Tristan is a multi-continent award-winning director of scientific and historical films and documentaries. Indeed, if I were to start listing all his accomplishments, we would be here all day, and you certainly haven't joined us here today to hear me waffle on. So, without further ado, may I welcome our speaker for today, Worshipful Brother Tristan.
So I'm okay, thank you so much. In the very hard time with the COVID, so we are struggling as a Mason, of course, but as a member of family friends. And so for Masons, since 1 year, it's pretty a hard situation, a little bit like during the Second War in continental Europe when all the lodge were closed, So the brotherhood is we are suffering, because we have a very few contact with our brethren. So it's the time now. I see that in Europe and around the world that is the time now to rebuild our temple, maybe make some painting, change the furniture, make some this kind of stuff now is the good opportunity because the temple are closed. So it's what we are doing now in the regular Grand Lodge of Belgium. And we have of course a lot of hope for the future. We hope that in the next month everything will be okay, but we lose a lot of brethren. So I'm very happy to meet you all. I see that you are there is a lot of brethren this evening, but at the same time I have a thing for all the brethren who passed this year. A lot of brethren passed this year because they were old, they had COVID. So it's a good opportunity for me now to have a little thinking for them. That's
Absolutely. Thank you, Tristan. Absolutely. And first and foremost, may I just say thank you to you for allowing us and all our members to gain access to watch your wonderful films. I know that it's been a delight to watch, and we've got lots of questions that have come in. I'm going to start off actually by giving a question that was sent in to me. With regards to the Terra Masonica, what was the idea behind Terra Masonica compared with your other two Masonic works?
The first thing is it's to make a movie or to write a novel or to do every creative work. It's a very complex process. Maybe it was a middle life Masonic crisis for me, an explanation of that, because when you are traveling like this during 1 year, it's very time consuming. You can imagine that. It's money consuming. So it was a way for me to have the privilege, to travel like this. It's a big privilege, and to be welcome everywhere around the world. But it was an opportunity to me because I know that today that the Mason in their lodge around the world are living alone. We say that there is more or less 4 million Masons around the world. We don't know really how many Masons there are around the world. But what we know is that we have a decrease of membership and the average age is very high. So in the lodge, a normal lodge, I don't speak about Scandinavia, it's a very special case, but in a normal little lodge, it's around 40, 50 members. So all these lodges are a little bit like, aquarium. I don't know if this word exists in English. I checked that. Aquarium. Yes, aquarium. A lodge is like an aquarium in the society, and a Grand Lodge is a very big aquarium. And, the contact between all the lodge are, okay, there is some contacts, but the brethren, I saw that, are the feeling that it's very important to have very close bond between brethren, but in the same time, it's very complex to have this feeling of universality of Freemasonry. So there is some Mason, I'm not the Mason who traveled the most, but because there is other Mason like Thomas Jackson he's traveling all the time around the world. But it's difficult to have this feeling of brotherhood, without borders. What is really the fraternity around the world? So this movie was a way to show that and to celebrate, of course, the 300th anniversary of Freemasonry, which was very important for us. we are agreed that we are not sure that everything happened in 1717. Maybe it was 1707, 1714. We don't care. It's a symbolic date, you know. But 300th anniversary, it was super important. This time, the United Grand Lodge of England decided to make, you know, this series of documentary. It was inside Freemasonry, 7 episodes of about the Freemasonry in England. So I didn't want to do the same, you know. So I didn't want to do something very different. So it was my choice to show the diversity, you know. And the last thing was the most important is everything what I'm doing is for the open public. It's super important to address what we are doing for the young generation, especially the teenagers. And when we put, you know, the idea of Freemasonry in the brain of a teenager, it will start to grow, and we will have a new generation of young Masons. So this movie is of course, when you see this movie, you discover a lot of things, but in the same time, I show nothing about what's happening inside the lodge. I show no secret, nothing, no rituals. Um, uh, so yes, I wanted to address for the large audience, and it was a success because the non-Mason was very interested by this movie. So, and also it was a very positive movie, of course, because I'm a Mason. So I really wanted to make a positive movie about Freemasonry because I have faith in Freemasonry. It's my personal faith, and and also show that because a lot of Masons in England, Scotland, in US don't know nothing about how the Freemasons suffer so much in Spain, in Italy, in France, in Belgium, in Ukraine, in Russia, etc. So it's very important to show that there is a lot of situation today for Freemasons who are very hard. I went in Mali, with 9 bodyguards. You know, it was a very dangerous situation. A lot of brethren are dead today. So there is a lot of brethren who are in the movie who are dead today because of ISIS terror ship. So it was also important to show the reality, you know. So in this time of complotism, in this time of that the Freemason, the Jewish, I don't know, are ruling the world, it was important to show that the members of the lodge are just normal people. They are not intellectual. They are not scholar. They are not historian. They are not professor. They are not rich. They are just bus driver, worker. There is some lot of Masons who are facing some economic difficulties, etc., etc. So it's just the normal life. So it was my goal.
I'm going to move on to my next question now, and that's Othman. Brother Othman, would you like to ask your question?
Good evening. In your travel, did you find it any difficulty from government allowing any masonry to take place?
Sorry, I don't understand the question. Please, could you repeat?
As you traveling throughout the world, did you find that masonry had to go underground because the government did not agree with it, or?
Of course, yes. Yes, there is lot of countries where even the Freemasonry is allowed. There is no interdiction. The Masonry have to be underground. For example, in Morocco, you know, in Morocco, there is very old lodge, a very important lodge in Morocco. And I really wanted to show that, especially in Tanger, the town of Tanger, because it's a port, you know, it's a haven, and in all the port around the world you have very important lodge, cosmopolitan lodge, but because of the situation in Morocco, all the brethren didn't want to be filmed, you know. So it was one of the example, but or I could say that in Africa it's difficult. In Middle East, of course, it's super difficult, super dangerous. Um, um, and in Europe, it's not super easy. In Spain, the situation is still today a very difficult situation for the Mason. I don't speak about the English lodge who exist in Spain now for Mason who are retired, you know, but really Spanish lodge, a member of the Grand Lodge of Spain, it's very difficult because they are suffering from every week you have an aggression against the temples. So in France also, you know, it's not an easy situation. So we have a race today of the, I don't like to speak about politics, but we have a race of populism, of right-wing movement who really focus against Freemasonry and other communities. So it's a hard time for Freemasonry, but in the same time, when we are suffering this kind of situation, it's also the time that if we really believe in Freemasonry in these kind of countries, we believe in liberty. And so we have to maintain our lodge, even if it's difficult. We have to maintain our meeting, even if it's difficult, because we know that one day the sun, you know, will come again and it will change. So the hope, it's a part of the main value of Freemasonry. So as a Mason, even if it's difficult, we have to maintain our craft, our knowledge, and initiation. You know that in the concentration camp, there were two lodges in the concentration camp, one in Germany and one in Japan. Not in Japan, in China, when Japan occupied China. And this lodge in the concentration camp in China, it's a very, very super important lodge, and it was very hard for the brethren. But each week they had they do the best to have a meeting. And in the same time, in the other lodge in Germany, the name of this lodge, it's difficult to translate in English, but we could say loved liberty, you know, liberty loved. We love liberty, something like this. And this lodge was able to make one initiation. So even if it's tough, even if it's hard, it's possible to practice Freemasonry.
Lovely. Thank you, Tristan. Hope that answered your question, Othman. Next, could we go to Rob Crawford? Hi, Rob.
Hi, yeah, I'll just put my camera back on again because I have it on my TV, so it looks very strangely looking up at the screen. I think you've maybe covered most of the questions that I was going to ask, but I was going to ask, did you have a lot of apprehension from people when traveling around the different places in the world, whether they at first wanted to speak to you, when you arrived they thought, well, maybe this is a bad idea? I've only got halfway through the second episode of the Around the World series with the 2 episodes, but also the fact that when you went to the open air lodge, how pleased the man seemed to be, the fact that you wanted to go there. Did you find, or was it more that type of response and reception that you got from the different people that you spoke to?
Okay, so, but you know, when you make a movie like this, you have to prepare a lot. So it was a long time before the start of the travel, you know. So first of all, I met Scottish Key, and Scottish Key, maybe you don't know, but in 2008, it was a huge success around the world and really a big success. So for me, as a director of the Scottish Key, a lot of brethren around the world knew me, you know, and it was a little bit like my passport, you know. They trust me. They knew that if I did something, it will be well done with respect and with this historical aspect, with the idea that the heritage, our cultural background, our cultural heritage, Masonic heritage was super important for me. So they knew that. So the first contact were good, but it took time because, you know, when you see the first part and the second part, you understand that there is a logic, you know, between each step of the travel. time after place after place, you discover another aspect of Freemasonry. And so all this process was a lot of discussion. For example, for Mother Lodge of Scotland, Kilreading Number Nothing, it took something like 3 months of discussion before starting the shooting, the filming. And, I make a list of wish, and I said, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to film that. And there were, it's a little bit, it's between us, but one of my wish was to show a Mason who, because in Scotland, that in Scotland they're struggling with economical difficulties, in the countryside. It's not an easy life. So I wanted to show that, but they refused to show that, It was shocking for them because they were very proud to be member of Mother Lodge of Scotland. And so they said, no, Tristan, okay, you could film what you want, but you don't allow you to film a brother with economical difficulties. So I said, okay, I will film that in another place. It's not a problem. But just to answer, it was a partnership. And I have to say that before the end of the editing, so the filming was 1 year and the editing of the movie was 1 year of work. It was a very long process because of the music. The music of the movie, it's what made by 7 composers. So it was a very long process, special effect, etc. So it was a long process. And after that, I have an agreement with all the lodge to screen the own part, and to say, okay, it's good, So the film was in the first step before the broadcasting was the film had to be receive the stamp from each lodge. It was super important for me, because this work in progress together was very important, and it was a great privilege to work with all the brethren and find the best part, the best ideas, the best, etc. So it's not my movie. I didn't make this movie alone. I made this movie with hundreds of brethren together.
Excellent. Hope that answered your question, Rob. Thank you. Next, could we go to Simon Reeder, please? Hi, Simon. Oh, have we lost Simon? We just...
Is that better?
Oh, that's better, Simon. Yep, we got you now.
Okay. It's all right. I clicked the speaker. I didn't click Zoom. I apologise. I watched the films. Fantastic. There was far too much in there for me to take the whole lot in. I'm going to have to re-watch them. And I didn't think there was going to be a question until I heard a question earlier that suddenly made me think of something. And I was really taken back and loved the fact that the Grand Lodge of Israel, on their symbol, united the 3 faiths of Jerusalem. Obviously, as a Freemason, I know and accept and expect that all the Masons would have done that anyway. How's it viewed by non-Masons around Jerusalem?
Yes, in Israel, it's a very special country because if you don't travel in Israel, if you don't know nothing about Israel, if you just watch TVs and news about Israel, you will have a very bad idea of how the life is in Israel. Israel, it's a very incredible country with incredible variety of religion. There is some religion in Israel. I didn't know it was exist, There is a religion in Haifa. Is the center. It's a movement of a Muslim movement who was born 100 years ago, and the center of that is in Haifa. It's a very special religion, etc., etc. So the Holy Land is a very special place because I could say that everything with spiritual is accepted, you know. So there is nothing, you know, the lodge of the doors of the lodge are open. When you go to a meeting, really open, everybody could come in, come out, a little bit like in India, you know. So the lodge are not hidden. It's a heritage, of course, from Scotland and England during the colonization of Palestine. So there is very old lodge in Israel, but it's a very interesting mix, you know, and it's the only place in Israel where people could have a meeting just as human. You know, that's just incredible, you know, because everywhere in Israel, when you are meeting somebody, oh, you are Jews, you are Muslim, you are Jewish, you are Christian, you are atheist, you are agnostic, blah, 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 blah. In the lodge is the only way where we are brethren. We don't speak about religion. We don't speak about politics. And it's just incredible. So I love so much that. And also, you know, Dan Doran, who is in the movie, it's very important for me because, you know, we say that we are in the Temple of Solomon, and the worshipful master is the seat of the King of Solomon, blah, blah, blah. But of course, if we elect a new worshipful master of our lodge, and he's really believe that he's in the seat, the holy seat of the King of Solomon, it could be a little bit crazy, you know. So it was very important for me that a brother told me in Israel that the reference to the Holy Temple of Solomon was an example of the temple, you know. So is the temple okay? But we know that all the temples around the world are basically had the same idea, you know. So it's not the temple of Solomon who is important, it's the idea of the temple, you know. So it was important that a Jewish who were able to explain that in a very simple way. And also in Jerusalem, all the tourists are going to just see the same spot, but I film another spot is the real entry of the temple. And I don't know why, but nobody goes there. You know, there's this shot with the 3 doors. And it's super important because there is one door for some people, a second door for a second category of people, and a third door. So it was super important to show that. And because there is a meaning behind that. And so it was, yes, for me, it was important. And it was, I think, these travels start from the west, sorry, and go to the east. And Israel is exactly in the middle, you know. So if you want to go to the east, you have to pass from Israel. And after that, you could go far to the east. And yes, but what I have to say also is that the situation, because Israel is in a very difficult political situation, so it's not easy there is a freedom to film in Israel. So when I have my big camera and I could film everywhere, you know, it's not the case in a lot of countries. You need authorization, you need to go to you have, maybe sometimes you have to pay. It's not the case in Israel. Really, there is a real freedom of press. But I had this strange feeling that nobody cares, in fact, you know. Nobody cares, you know. There is some more things that are more important in the world today. Some more difficulties are more important to do than just the guys coming with a camera to film Masonic temples, especially in Israel. So in Israel, when I came, so that I tried to do my best to make some nice shot, but really nobody cares and nobody helped me, really. So I was a little bit alone, but you have to know that there is a very big difference between the Freemasonry in Jerusalem and the Freemasonry outside Jerusalem, okay? Inside Jerusalem, the Freemasonry and the Lodge are very orthodox, very religious. And outside Jerusalem, all the lodge are more open, more open for different books. For example, is the only lodge in the world where I see the invisible book. I don't know this, if you know this story. No. So there is you could put you have to put the Bible with the New and the Old Testament, but you could add all the book you want if you want. And but there is only one place in the world where you have an invisible book, and it's the book of the Druze. The Druze, it's a Muslim religion, and it's forbidden for the Druze to show their own book, So we know that the Druze have the Quran, but there is a little, I don't really know why, but there's a little difference, and they are focusing on one point in the Quran, and it's forbidden for them to show that for non-Druze. So you have, when they have to make their obligation, there is an invisible book, and it's the only place in the world where you have that. But I have to, and I will finish with that, to film in IFA, Raven Lodge #1 with the Scottish Rite. We belong to the Grand Lodge of Scotland. This was very special, the green apron and etc. in Israel is really special. So this is a part of the incredible history of Freemasonry, is this idea that the past, our heritage is so important. And when you see these brethren who are so, for them it's so important to have this green apron and belong to the Grand Lodge of Scotland. Exactly in Peru. In Peru you have that, in Lima, in Peru, you have a lot of Scottish lodge who belong to Grand Lodge of Scotland, and it's an incredible clash of civilization. It's just crazy, and beautiful in the same time, because as a Mason, it's super easy for us to participate to the meeting, of course.
Lovely. Thanks, Simon.
Great answer. Thank you.
Wonderful. Could we next go to, I know he's having issues putting his hands up, Lee Elu? Hello, Lee.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just unmuting myself. Thank you very much for that, Tristan. One of the questions I was going to ask you was what Simon has already asked you, and you've answered it very eloquently. Now, I purchased your DVDs about 3 or 4 years ago, so I've actually seen them, and I went back through them again, and I also gave a few out at some festive board raffles, and fantastic work that you've done, Tristan, there. I was going to ask, apart from the religious side of it there in Jerusalem, in your journeys in Europe, which country do you think promoted more the sort of Freemasonry and wasn't afraid to sort of talk about it? I mean, I'm Italian, so you probably know the history from the Italian side. And also here in, UGLE, we're trying to be more open with people, but of course maintaining what we are between ourselves, right? So what do you think, Tristan, is in your journey, which one was the sort of more forthcoming Grand Lodge for you?
It's a little bit difficult to answer to this question, because in French, we said, comparison is not reason. When you make a comparison, you compare something, it's not a reason, you know, it's not reasonable. So I think, for example, like in Italy, we know the story of Italy, the civilization. The most important writer maybe in the human history is Dante Alighieri. As a Mason, it's impossible to don't know, to didn't read Dante Alighieri. My great sadness is don't speak Italian and read Dante Alighieri in the text, you know, because as a Mason, Dante Alighieri is exactly the perfect balance between the antiquity and modernity. And for me, maybe it could be the beginning of Freemasonry. And we have so much great temples. People don't know that there is so most beautiful temple in Firenze, in Venezia, etc., etc. And how the greatness of Freemasonry in Italy is, you know. So the beauty of Freemasonry in Italy. And so it's a very complex question because today, as I say, around the world, Freemasonry is facing difficulties and we have to accept that everywhere. So today it's super easy to be Freemason in Scandinavia. Okay, because there is a tradition in Scandinavia, very special tradition, we know that. But for example, in Germany, it's not super easy. And in the south of, in the Latin Europa, so starting from the south of Belgium, France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, etc., it's not easy. We know that the Masonry in Turkey is super important in history, in the modern history of Turkey. The Freemasonry is a part of the modern Turkey, the building of the modern state. And now today, the Freemasonry in Turkey is hidden and they are suffering a lot. So, but how to come, the idea is how to communicate outside. So for me, the best example today is in Belgium. I'm a bit nationalistic, but because, you know, I didn't film in Terra Masonica, Belgium, because as a Belgian citizen, we are not very nationalist, you know. We are more open to the world than the French or the German of the English, you know. If you are English, you speak about the English Freemasonry, and the English Freemasonry is the best of the world. If you are Scottish, it's the same. If you are Irish, it's the same. In Belgium, we are nothing, you know. We are little people in the middle of nowhere, in a little very surrealist and crazy country. So, but in Belgium, there is a very interesting experience, and they are opening now Masonic Lodge in university. So we asked to Old Mason to open lodge, new lodge in university, and exactly like 300 years ago. So they opened lodge in the tavern, in the cafe, you know, in the first floor. They rent the first floor for twice a month. And, you know, it's an incredible success in Belgium. So we have an incredible amount of new members because of this new lodge in university. And it costs nothing. It's very surprising because, you know, the old, you know, there is this idea that it's super important to have very beautiful temples with great furnitures, you know, great seats, etc. When you open a new lodge in the first floor of the tavern, you have nothing, just tables and chairs. So you have to find a solution, and it's a great success. And these students who are in PhD, maybe they are finishing university and they are apprentice, and directly they are traveling because they have to travel for the university to finish the PhD, and they are going to Australia, they are going to England, they are going to US, and the first thing they are doing, the first thing they are doing is going to the lodge. Why? Because when you are alone in a city, in a big city, you are suffering because you stay alone, you know nobody. But when you have the privilege as a very young Mason, 20 years, 25 years old, and you are visiting a lodge, and directly all the members of this lodge will have the feeling that, oh, it's my little son, you know, they will take care of him, this young student. And in 1 week of 10 days, he will learn more about this country than expatriate, somebody who is living in this country since 10 years, you know. So it's super important for the young generation to have access for Freemasonry just to travel, for me. So if there is a future of Freemasonry connected to the 300th anniversary and the beginning of Freemasonry is this new kind of lodge. I know that there is a lot of lodge in US and in England in university, but this kind of lodge is very different, and it's a experimentation, and it's working very well.
Lovely. Thank you, Tristan. Thanks, Lee. Rather like asking him to pick his favorite child, that was. Very hard to answer. Next, could we go to Brian Harefield, please? Hi, Brian.
Hi, Amit. Hi, Tristan. Hi, all. The question I've got is that as a Freemason, I found the films, all three of them, extremely interesting to look at and to absorb over an hour at a time. Tristan, you mentioned in your introduction about sowing seeds in the teenagers. Now, we all know that teenagers use social media, and their attention span is probably 5.8 seconds, not 58 minutes. How do you think we can get individuals like yourself to be able to produce universal small snapshots with links that would stoke that interest and then develop that interest further? Thank you.
Yes, Brian, but first of all, 50% of the Mason around the world are son of nephew of Mason, you know. So 50% of the Mason of the world belong to a Mason family. My uncle is a Mason. So in Africa, you have to know that in Central Africa, the spiritual path is not taught by the father, but by the uncle. Okay? So because there is a conflict between the son and the father, the son wants to be different than his father, you know. He don't want to follow the path of his father. He wants to say, you know, I'm different than my father. I want to live my own life, and I want to achieve my own dreams, blah, 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 blah. It's normal. So it's the conflict of generation, but only one who could save, I could say, the spiritual path of the family is the uncle. So it's very simple around a little discussion the Sunday. If you say to a teenager, you know, I'm a Mason, it was important in my life. And Mozart was also a Mason, and the initiation in Masonry, it's my case, and I think your case, Brian, was the most important day of my life, one of the most important day of my life, with the born of my children, with my wedding, etc. And it's enough, you know. You don't need to in Freemasonry is not like a religion, so we don't make promotion, you know. We don't want to make it's very some country who some lodge are making some advertising in the newspaper. If you want to be a member in the lodge, just call this number, free number, you know. So I think it's a very bad idea. The first thing is, okay, we know that because why the Freemasonry had a success in the past? Why there were this incredible expansion of Freemasonry between 1717 and 1730? Why in 20 years the Freemasonry was the most important movement in the beginning of the 18th century? Because the idea of Freemasonry was connected to the time. It's not the case today. So we can't swim against the movement, we can't go against the time, it's difficult today. But what I appreciate, it's when the Freemasonry have to suffer from some very complotist or very aggressive attacks, especially from the press, especially from the newspaper. It was 1 or 2 years ago, for the first time in history, the United Grand Lodge of England published in all the newspaper in England a double page with just 2 words: enough is enough. And for me, it was super important. So sometimes as a Mason, we have to say, when we face some people who are against Freemasonry, for example, in my situation, I'm a film director. I'm making movies, I'm working for TVs, and I'm meeting so many journalists who are against Freemasonry. Everybody knows that I'm a Mason, but I'm very surprised that why there is so many journalists who are against Freemasonry. Why? So enough is enough. We didn't kill nobodies. We are just working for communities. We are raising funds, blah, blah, blah. We're working for the betterment, humankind, etc. So please, enough is enough. So sometimes it's very important to in our day-to-day life, that as a Mason, to say, if we are meeting people who are really it's a question of pride, and it's a question of if nobody, if I didn't make Terra Masonica because I wanted to do that, who did that? Who will be able to do that? Nobody, so we have to act. If we are doctor, if you are teacher, if you are etc., everywhere we have the possibility to promote the idea of enlightenment, of respect, of brotherhood everywhere, especially for the teacher, and especially for the teacher for primary schools. So it's just a question to say, today everybody say Black Lives Matter, but we know that black as a Mason, we practice that Black Lives Matter, yellow life matter, red life matter, all the color of the humankind matter for us as a Mason. So we didn't wait this time to promote cosmopolitanism and respect and brotherhood. So for the teenager, it's difficult, because in the same time we have to put the idea. So for example, Terra Masonica is a good opportunity to show to the young generation, to say, this is the Freemasonry, look at that, it's a great opportunity for you. And in the same time, we have to stop and respect their own path. So it's a very difficult, balance. Don't do too much,
Lovely. Thanks, Brian. I'm sure there'll be snippets in the future for sure. Could we next go to Hilary, please? Hi, Hilary.
Yeah, good evening. I noticed on your various travels that a lot of countries are experiencing a drop in numbers of brethren. But I did notice that in parts of India, they are experiencing a 15% growth, and that a lot of interest is being shown by young professionals and young academics who are not following in their father's footsteps, but still are showing a great deal of interest in the order. Did you actually notice a big difference in their attitude from other places in the world?
Yes, of course. It was for me a game changer because this is one of the reasons that I stopped my travel in India, because I knew that if I went to, for example, in Japan, uh, in Singapore, or in New Zealand, Australia, I will find American style Freemasonry or English style Freemasonry, you know. So in India, it was really an incredible um, uh, um, uh, um, incredible positive, there is so much energy, so much discussion. And for example, between the daughters of our Miss brethren there, you know, I feel a lot of discussion between, you know, you have this idea in India when you have somebody who have a success in life, is a little bit rich, of middle class. So you have the father, you know, in the living room, surrounded by the mother and 2, 3, 4 daughters. And all the daughters are doctor, working in IT, finishing university, very high level of education. And they has the father, why? We don't have any opportunity to enter in Freemasonry. And I feel this kind of discussion, and I saw the face of the father who didn't have any answer about that, you know. So the Grandmaster after that told me that they are building a Freemasonry inspired by Eastern Star in India. So now I guess it's there is this possibility for these young ladies, but everything is moving so fast in India. And there is so much respect for all the belief, and there is so much heritage in India for 1,000 years, coming back from the Mongol invasion, not just English occupation, but far long time ago. So when you visit that and you see that the increase of membership is so big, because so you know, the idea is that is in Europe we don't understand that the initiation is different than the Masonic path. So in India you have the initiation, it's one thing, and you have the Masonic path. So they know that when you make initiation of young person who have a great potential because of education, you know that this person will be maybe a great physician, a great scientific, and maybe this person will work 15, 18 hours a day during 30 years. So you don't, it's normal that this person will not come often to the meeting, you know, it's absolutely normal in India. So when you make an initiation, after that, maybe this apprentice, I could say, will come back 30, 40 years later and come back to his lodge and say, now I have time to participate to the meeting. So there is a clear separation between initiation and Masonic path. For example, in France, if you don't come in the meeting, they will put you out of the lodge. Okay, so it's very strict. You have to participate to the meeting. And for me, I'm against this vision. You know, we are free as a Mason to go or not in the meeting. And if I have work, obligation of work, I have to go to my work. Yeah. If I have family obligation, I have to take care of my family. So you know, Victor Hugo, the most important French writer, said 40 years is the end of your young life and the beginning of your older life. In French, it's more beautiful. It's a poem like Robert Burns. In French, he said, 40 ans, c'est la vieillesse de la jeunesse et la jeunesse de la vieillesse. C'est très, très beau. It's very beautiful. So 40 years, it's really a very important time in the Masonic path. So you have two lives in Freemasonry. You have your life between your initiation and 40 years. And after that, you have, so it's an external travel, a Masonic travel in life, a Masonic travel on the earth. You have to travel, you have to work, you have to build your life, etc. So it's an external travel. And after 40 years, it's an internal travel. So if you enter in Freemasonry very, very late, this is the problem today. When you enter in Freemasonry at 40, 45, 50 years old, you lose the first life of the Masonic path, you know. So you start with the internal travel, like in Dante Alighieri, the hell from Dante Alighieri. And so you start your internal travel inside yourself, inside the earth. And it's another path. It's more philosophical, it's more spiritual, but you can't ask the same question for a young person, a philosophical question to a young person. This kind of question is very difficult for a young Mason. And in India, it's very incredible because, you know, and you don't just find that in India, you find that also that in Africa. In Africa, it's just incredible because in the middle of the desert, when you find a Masonic lodge, or when you have a discussion with a Mason, it's just incredible of deepness, of quality of exchange. And it's surprising because they don't have books. They don't have Masonic books. They don't have access to internet. And it's just because the cultural background is so big, you know, in Africa and in India, that the relation, because the cultural background and the Masonic symbolism, this relation makes sense, you know. So, for example, if you see the seconds in Terra Masonica in Mali, in Bamako, and in the Dogon civilization coming back from the 14th century, when a Dogon speak, when he say what the meaning of what is light, what is opening a door, etc., it's a reference to his own culture, his own cultural background, and at the same time, it's an explanation for Freemasonry. So it's exactly what you find in India. So in India is the exact perfect balance between the cultural background, the cultural knowledge, the education, and the future.
Thank you very much. Just out of interest, my daughter is a Freemason and she joined at 21.
Thank you. Right, can we go to our final question for today? It will be back to you, Othman.
Thanks again. I have to tell him I'm from Jerusalem, so I know what you're talking about when you say about visiting Jerusalem. And some part of my family will kill me if I told them I'm a Mason, and the other one say, well, it's up to you. But we found out that most of the Masonic lodges that you've been, that whatever they were, Christians, Muslim, or Jews, that they keep forgetting the common domination, that it is there for the one and only true Most High. That's what you actually relate to. But have you ever seen a Masonic ceremony that you do not agree with, or you don't think it's right on your visit?
Yes, there is. We have the. It's very important. We are a member of the regular Freemasonry, and why it's very important to be a part of regular Freemasonry and to be very strict about what is regular Freemasonry is the fact that it's not a lack of respect for people, for a style of Freemasonry who is different. It's not that. It's very, very simple. First, we have the great architect of the universe. Secondly, we have the holy books. And third, we have the three lights. So the great architect of the universe is the first thing I would like to speak is if you look, if you know a little bit about the Torah and the Old Testament, you will know, you will find no, you will not find these words, great architect of the universe. If you look at the New Testament, you will not find the great architect of the universe. And if you look at the Quran, you will not find the great architect of the universe. So it was a big problem for American church in the 50s, during the McCarthyism, during this time of the Cold War. What is the meaning of that? Is it God or not? And so in 1926, the Baptist Church of US sent letters and letters and letters in London and asked, what is the meaning of the great architect of the universe? And there were a little statement, and the answer, the great architect of the universe is the supreme being. And today everybody is happy. The problem of the supreme being. What is the meaning of the supreme being is exactly the same problem. You don't find any reference of the supreme being in the Torah. You don't find any reference of the supreme being in the New Testament. So the supreme being, what is the supreme being? The only reference of that is super important, is coming from the French Revolution. And the supreme being is addition of the citizen. And this is the idea behind the Constitution of United States. Why in US, on the dollar, the print in God we trust? Because there is, when you create freedom, liberty, a republic, it's very important to have a holy aspect of this state, of this political body. And the idea, it's very subtle, you know, it's very complex to understand, but all the citizens of a nation form the supreme being. So when we are together as a citizen of a nation, for example, US, of any kind of democratic country, of when we are forming a lodge together, really hand in hands, forming the union chain together, we are forming together the supreme being. So the idea behind that is 1 + 1 is not 2, it's 3. Okay, so for me, because when we speak with the young generation, we know that they have difficulty to you know, they want to do a spiritual shopping, I could say. They want to go in the shopping and say, my spirituality is little bit of Buddhism, little bit of ecologism, respect of earth, a little bit of, I don't know, of etc., of psychanalysis, I don't know, and they build their own spirituality. It's not the way it's working. And so we are, when we enter in a regular lodge, we really sincerely make our obligation and really believe in the great architect of the universe. And this is super important. So when I visit some lodge in the world who there is no great architect of the universe. So for me, it's just impossible. you know, because it's absolutely against the spirit of Freemasonry, absolutely against. So there is really a border, you know, a very strong border. So it's not something that we could discuss, you know. There is some basic, we call that the landmarks, but there is some very basic principle of the traditional Freemasonry. But in the same time, this, for example, in Germany is super interesting, because in Germany you have since the beginning of the Freemasonry in 1727 in Hamburg, the Freemasonry started in the north of Germany. We had during 300 years two movements, a humanistic movement and orthodox movement, you know, very traditional movement and a little bit more a progressive movement, I could say. And the greatness of the German Freemasonry is to keep together these two movements, you know. So you could have together in the same lodge, in myself, in my body, a progressive movement. I could say to myself, Tristan, maybe you have to change. Maybe you have to do this thing in another way. But it's in the same time as I have to think to myself, yes, but I have a knowledge, I have experience, and I have to avoid some mistakes. So I will be orthodox and in the same time progressive. So in the regular Freemasonry, you could have progressive movement and you could change things. You could change, you could adapt to the situation, but the basic aspects are super important, super important. And I would like to finish with the great architect of the universe. The first time we know it's a historical proof, it's when they translate the Bible in Geneva by Calvin and Luther. They translate the Bible in Geneva from Latin to French by Calvin, and after that, Latin to German by Luther, and after that, Latin to Italian. So it was the first time that the Bible was translated, and Calvin made a little commentary in the Genesis, Old Testament, in the Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, and he writes, the Garden of Eden was built by the great architect of the universe. This is the first time that we have this reference with the great architect of the universe.
Tristan,
So,
I'm ever so sorry.
yeah, and it's important to say that. It's super important because it's so basic, you know. So I've just finished with that. Yeah.
No, thank you
so much.
On behalf of everyone here, say thank you ever so much